I apologize for this video. It's not what you're used to seeing from me, I know, and I plan to get back to more of what I usually do after this. I wasn't planning on making this video at all. It's just sort of thrown together, but a lot of people asked me to post what I have to say about Donald Trump's election win, so I will. There's a couple different types of people who voted for Trump. Now, you have the dyed-in-the-wool Trump cult, who are terminally online, turn everything into a meme, actively hate your guts, and are currently hunting for people to make fun of and gloat over and talk about their delicious tears and telling them to cope and seethe and whatnot. It's all a big game to them. And then you have the normies who just know that they've been paying a lot more for groceries, gas, and rent, and it's hurting them financially, and they just want some relief, and they've been relentlessly told that it's Biden's fault and that Trump will fix it. They don't know or don't care about any of the culture war issues that are maliciously used to divide us. They don't know or don't care about the other scandals surrounding Trump, nor about his legal battles, or they think that's lawfare, so they disregard it, and they voted for Trump. Pure, simple, direct self-interest. The Democrats failed to successfully answer that. As far as the cultists go, I was 100% right in my previous video in which I said presenting all those damning facts and figures against Trump wouldn't matter to them. It didn't. You wouldn't have been able to walk into Jonestown and convince the people not to drink the poisoned Kool-Aid by presenting them with all sort of evidence, including facts and figures, that Jim Jones was wrong. That's not what convinced them, and it would not be what unconvinced them. People compartmentalize their logic in order to cling to their beliefs. That's why sometimes really smart people believe really dumb things. Here's an example of a buddy of mine who compartmentalized his logic. Now, he thinks that Trump can do no wrong. Trump gets every benefit of the doubt, every charity is graded by the biggest curve, and everyone else is immediately suspect and held to 100 times greater standards. Now, he watched my video. Let me give you an example of two criticisms he gave of my video in which it's clear that his logic became compartmentalized. The first criticism is that in regard to the section about Trump's terrible war record, he focused on the number of bombs Trump dropped. When I presented the numbers, he said, "But look at Obama. Look at how high they were when Trump took office. And then when Trump came into office, he inherited the wars. So they were high under him, yes, but then look what happened by the end of Trump's term. The number of bombs declined." Now, first of all, that's not entirely true, because you can clearly see that they were ramping back up in Yemen, which Trump enabled with his unethical weapons sales to Saudi Arabia, a main point of contention in my video. Now, the whole point of my criticism, however, was to dispel this idea that the Trump years were peaceful. It's perfectly valid to point out that the bombing campaigns in other areas were being drawn down. That's a good thing, but it doesn't really address my point. Now, keep the logic for his argument in your mind. Trump inherited the wars from prior presidents. That's the logic. That being said, compare that to his second criticism, which was about the economy. And this one is more important in terms of the election, because according to the exit polls, it's the reason Trump got elected again. His argument was, look at how inflation spiked under Biden. Look at how everything got more expensive under Biden. Now, notice how when it came to the bombs, he acknowledged cause and effect. Trump inherited wars from prior presidents, so he had to drop bombs. His hand was forced. But notice how this same charity is not applied to Biden when it comes to how disastrous 2020 was in terms of the economy. What happened during 2020 was so bad that it was going to affect the economy the following years, no matter who was in office. If Trump had been reelected in 2020, inflation still would have went up just as it did all around the world, and the corporations still would have taken advantage of that with price gouging, and you still would have had to pay more for everything. These charts show what inflation did in France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States, and as you can see, they all follow a similar pattern. They all spiked after COVID and then came back down. Cause and effect. COVID happened under Trump, and then Biden inherited the economic fallout. Just like Trump inherited the wars, Biden lowered inflation and lowered the deficit, just like Trump lowered the number of bombs dropped. But notice how only one is acknowledged, but not the other, because it's political bias, compartmentalized logic. Look at the deficits. See, people who are economically illiterate perceive the economy in very simple ways. They think Trump president times good, Biden president times bad. Therefore, Trump better. What they don't understand is that Biden's economy was a direct reaction to what happened during the Trump years. The economy doesn't just completely reset itself with each new president. Each president inherits various problems and benefits. The truth is that Trump increased the deficit for every single year he was in office, and Biden lowered it. The truth is that Biden was damage control. But when you're at the grocery store paying too much, it doesn't feel that way to you. Look at what happened when Obama took office. See how the deficit suddenly skyrocketed? Well, that was because of the GFC, which happened from 2007 to 2008. That was when the banks got into trouble for making all those bad loans. Now, the policies most directly responsible for that happened under Bill Clinton, a decade before Obama took office, but they directly impacted Obama's first years. Now, things like that are what the normies don't understand. What a president does today can have a profound economic effect 10 years from now. And it's not like there were no warnings. People even used the term too big to fail long before there was a need for bailouts. People saw it coming before Obama was even elected. So Obama inherited an economic disaster. The deficit skyrocketed because of all the bailouts, and everyone, including me, hates the fact that that had to be done. But the alternative could have been far more disastrous for all of us. Far more people needed to be held accountable for that, though, obviously. Too many people who were at fault benefited and pocketed that money. Now, I don't want to go too far on a tangent regarding that, but notice that the deficits at least gradually lowered until that final year of Obama's presidency. And then Trump came in and not only increased spending, but cut taxes, lowering revenue. Do one or the other, but not both simultaneously. He did both. Bad idea. I mean, if you blow your entire retirement in a couple years, it might be a really fun couple of years, but times after that are going to be rough. So, just like Obama inherited a disaster with the global financial crisis, Biden inherited a disaster with COVID. But people don't acknowledge that. All they know is, I had more money under Trump and I had less money under Biden. Therefore, Trump good and Biden bad. Therefore, vote for Trump. Easy, simple, and dumb. So what happens next? One of two narratives. The Biden recovery is successful and Trump inherits the benefits. The economy does well and Trump gets 100% of the credit. Everyone who voted for Trump feels vindicated, even though they shouldn't. In truth, depending on what Trump does, he very well may deserve some credit if he doesn't mess up the recovery. But given what he wants to do, I don't exactly have confidence in that, which brings us to the second narrative. The second narrative is that the economy will not do well, and if that's the case, suddenly Trump supporters will magically comprehend cause and effect again, and they will blame Biden. and claimed that Trump inherited a disaster and that it was all Biden's fault. Now, depending on what Trump does to either help or hurt the economy, that narrative could have some validity. Maybe Biden could have done more to prevent the rampant price gouging, for instance. But if he did that, then profits would not have been as good, and the stock market would not have done as well, and the narrative would have been, look at what Biden did to your 401ks. Under Trump, line went up, but under Biden, line went down. The narrative would have been so relentless that people would have been terrified about their retirements. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I'm not sure what will happen, but if I were forced to bet, I'd say scenario 2. We are way overdue for a recession. Consider the inverted yield curve. This happens when the interest rates of short-term bonds are higher than that of long-term bonds. It's usually the other way around. It indicates that investors are piling into the longer terms because they lack confidence in the economy. This is a recession indicator. Look at this chart. Everything below that black line is when the yield curve was inverted. Those gray vertical bars represent recessions. Now, notice the correlation. When the yield curve uninverts, we usually experience a recession the following year. Look at the early 80s. That recession happened because of the Phillips curve, which was when they tried to lower unemployment via higher inflation. Those policies began in the 60s, and it affected the early 80s. Now look at 1990. That recession was caused by the savings and loan crisis and the Gulf War. Now see how the yield curve uninverts in 1989. And then by 1990, we're in a recession. Look at the recession of 2001, which was the dot-com crash. The yield curve uninverts in the year 2000, and by 2001, we're in a recession. Now look at the recession in 2008, which was the global financial crisis. The yield curve uninverts in 2007, and by 2008, we're in a recession. Now in 2019, the yield curve inverted ever so slightly, and in 2020, we had a mini recession. The longer the curve is inverted, the worse the recession. Now see how long the curve was inverted for the GFC? It was about 2 years, and the recession was really bad and lasted for about 2 years. Now our current yield inversion is massive, about 3 years long, and it went far deeper. And we just uninverted this year. If the pattern holds, then we are in for one hell of a recession sometime later in 2025. We never fully paid the price for COVID. All we did was kick the can down the road. And that mini recession in 2020 does not accurately reflect what we did. The next recession is payday for COVID, and the pattern shows that it will probably happen within a year. But maybe I'm wrong, and the Federal Reserve pulled off a soft landing or no landing, and we'll all be fine. I just would not bet on it. So that's my assessment of what happened. In the end, the rhetoric surrounding the economy and why everyone is paying more for everything is what won Trump the presidency. The truth is that it's far more nuanced, and where the blame and credit should be placed is far more complicated than more money with Trump, less money with Biden. But people are very simple, fickle creatures, and it is exceedingly easy to lead them astray with the power of social media. So there will be Trump supporters who post things like cope and seethe as they try to gloat. But for me, all that does is announce how easily fooled they are. Trump doesn't care about you, and he doesn't care about the country. He cares about enriching himself and being worshipped. He is the ultimate double standard personified. He can call you an extreme leftist communist who wants to destroy the country, but if you call him garbage, it's beyond the pale. Trump pitted this country against itself. There was violent social unrest every year Trump was in office, culminating in 2020, which was a terrible year. None of that widespread violence in America happened over the last 4 years. It's actually been quite peaceful. That's another thing that could change given how divisive Trump is and how willing he is to use the government to fuck with the lives of people over culture war issues. How willing he is to pit us against each other. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with abortion and gay marriage and transgender people and the imposition of religion and a million other social issues, but I do know that people might take to the streets over it. And whether you love Trump or hate Trump, you're in for a shit show. To those of you who it will affect the most, I'm sorry. I did what little I could with what I have. I tried. It wasn't nearly enough, and I knew it wouldn't be, as I said in the video itself. Sometimes you just have to defy anyway, even though you know you won't succeed. And that's because you have to be able to honestly look at yourself in the mirror and not hate what you see. Be true to yourself. Take care.